Beware the Mardy Monster. Written and told by Kiefer Adams. The Fat Controller was standing at Knapford Yards early one morning when Bill and Ben puffed in, rather tired and exhausted. Between them was Hector, the large hopper truck. "Good heavens, you two," he said. "You don't look well at all. Is everything all right?" "We're so sorry, sir," said Bill. "We feel we're a bit overworked. Even Mavis is struggling with the trucks," said Ben.
"From what I've seen, Sir Topham," said Hector, "Bill, Ben and Mavis are in need of some extra help at the quarry."
"I couldn't agree more, Hector," replied the Fat Controller. "The mainland have kindly allowed us to borrow one of their engines. The Mardy Monster..." Before the Fat Controller could even finish, Bill and Ben were rather surprised. "A monster?" gasped Bill. "Working in our quarry?" wailed Ben. "We must warn Mavis." Hector was about to explain, but the twins had already dragged him away.
"Seriously, you two, it's not what you think,"
he said. But the twins didn't hear him. They were panicking too much. Even the Fat Controller had to scratch his head with confusion. He had never known the twins to act like that in the time they'd been on Sodor. A little later, Thomas was making his way back to Tidmouth Sheds. He had been working in the quarry for a little bit with Mavis, but Bill and Ben had constantly been talking about the Mardy Monster all afternoon. He puffed past a junction where Murdoch was resting with a heavy goods. "Good evening, Thomas," he greeted. "You look rather puffed out." "Have you not heard the news?" said Thomas. "Bill and Ben said a Mardy Monster is coming to the island." Murdoch gave a hearty chuckle. "It's not what you think, Thomas," he began. "I must warn the others," Thomas interrupted. "They must know about this." Before Murdoch could say anything else, Thomas had puffed quickly away. "Young engines today," he chortled to himself. "They get worried over the tiniest of things." The next morning, Molly arrived at the quarry to collect an important shipment of stone to take to the docks. Bill and Ben were already there, but they had been told that the next day the Mardy Monster would come. "It's going to be the greatest thing to work in our quarry," boasted Bill proudly. "I don't like the idea of a monster working here," said Molly. "We didn't at first," admitted Ben, "but I think it might be exciting." "Imagine it," said Bill. "A great Mardy Monster, big enough to frighten even the toughest of engines." "Let's see what Gordon says the next time he teases us," chortled Ben. Molly was rather uncomfortable. "I wouldn't want to meet the Mardy Monster, thank you," she said, and she puffed away as soon as her trucks had been loaded. But Bill and Ben were too excited to even notice. Early the next morning, the engines were on high alert. They knew today the Mardy Monster would come. "If it even tries to get past us," said Gordon, "it's going to be in for a disgraceful time." "A disgusting one at that," cut in James. "Despicable," ruptured Henry. "I don't even know what that's supposed to mean," whispered Emily. "It's best that you don't know," replied Edward. "I stopped asking a long time ago." "But what if it does come and it's big and scary just as Bill and Ben said it would?" asked Toby. "Then we'll be ready for it," replied Thomas. "No monster is going to cause trouble on the Fat Controller's railway." "Will it, though?" asked Percy. "We're not exactly the right size to take on any monster." "Percy's right," said Emily. "What are we to do?" "We'll just have to find out until it arrives," replied Edward. But the engines were not so sure. Meanwhile, Rosie was making her way to collect some trucks from the chocolate factory. She chirpily puffed down a small hill and was surprised to find who was waiting at the bottom. A large green saddle tank engine with 6 huge wheels was looking as though he was lost. Excuse me, the tank engine boomed as Rosie came to a stop. Do you know where I could find the Central Island Quarry? You're not far from it, replied Rosie. Just follow the track down and it's on your first left. Thank you very much, said the engine. Who are you anyway? Rosie asked. My name's Mardy, replied the engine, but folks back home call me the Mardy Monster. Rosie was surprised. So you're the Mardy Monster, she chuckled. Everyone thought you were an actual monster. I get that a lot, said Mardy with a grin. Got to go now. Thanks again for the directions. Mardy puffed away down the line, while Rosie was determined that the first engine she saw on her travels would finally understand the truth of the Mardy Monster. At the quarry, Bill, Ben and Mavis were all in attendance. The twins were feeling rather excited. Won't be long now, Bill, whispered Ben. Oh no! Imagine it! No one will ever be scared of us again when we have that Mardy Monster in our corner. I'm not so sure, said Mavis, when a loud whistle sounded in the distance. That's not a monster, said Bill innocently. Not quite, said Mardy as he backed into the quarry. Bill, Ben and Mavis, I assume? That's right, said Mavis. You must be the Mardy Monster. Please, call me Mardy, he replied. You're the Mardy Monster? Asked Bill. Ben blushed a deep shade of red. I think we owe the others an apology, he groaned. Never mind that, said Mardy. Let's get this work done. And indeed they did. Mardy proved to be a rather powerful engine, and Bill and Ben were impressed. Other engines who had feared that a real Mardy Monster had come to the island soon warmed up to Mardy and made him feel welcome. Mardy stayed on Sodor for a couple more days until Bill, Ben and Mavis finally felt like they could carry on the work as usual. Mardy promised to return, and he hopes that when he does, there would be no more talks of monsters coming to help the engines of the Fat Controller's railway in the future.